With the release of Transformers Rise of the Beasts, I figured it'd be the perfect time to stop and rank all of these 7 live-action Transformers movies from the worst to the best. Let's get started. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Ben. On this channel, I love to talk about movies and TV, and if you also love to talk about movies and TV, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Before we get started, make sure to let me know down below in the comment section what is your ranking of all these 7 Transformers movies. I decided not to include any of the animated Transformers stuff, but you can if you would like. And also another thing to note is that I'm not the biggest Transformers guy, so take that into account as I'm ranking these movies. But with that being said, let's get started. In 7th or last place is going to be Transformers The Last Knight. Now, when I finally got to watching this movie, it was at this point in the franchise, after having seen this movie, where I'm just starting to think they've simply gone too far when it comes to making these Transformers movies. The movie opens with ridiculous backstory and the inclusion of Stanley Tucci as another character in the Transformers franchise once again, which makes no sense. I wouldn't care that he's back in this franchise playing a different character than Age of Extinction if he wasn't annoying in both of these movies, but he is just so aggravating to watch on screen. For whatever reason, his performance in these movies are bad. I don't even hate him as an actor. The dialogue is terrible, the comedy doesn't work, which is going to be something that is going to be a recurring theme with the Michael Bay Transformers movies. The story here is an absolute mess. For whatever reason, they decided to just expand the runtime to as long as it can get. So you just have uninteresting storylines here and there. Plus, there is an unnecessarily large amount of flashback sequences. The movie's just straight up boring, and Mark Wahlberg plays some sort of last knight. The fact that that's where they decided to take his character is bizarre. I don't even care for the action sequences here though, but it might be visually the best looking Transformers movie that we've ever gotten. But don't even get me started on the excessive amount of aspect ratio changes for no reason. They'll switch aspect ratios when characters are just having a discussion. It makes no sense. Usually you do that when there's like an action sequence, but no, this movie is terrible. In 6th place, I have Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. I just found this movie to be really cringy. The action is alright, which was a bit of a highlight, but the movie just meanders and is overly long and so insistent on being so sexual and vulgar within every joke. This movie had a bit of a struggle production-wise because it was created during the writer's strike. So the story is a bit of a mess, and I might give it a pass because of that. But I don't care about any of the characters, including the Transformers themselves, which is really bad when this is a Transformers movie. And unfortunately, this movie is kind of neck and neck with the movie above this one, which is the original Transformers movie from 2007. I wouldn't go back and revisit most of these movies, but especially these first couple Transformers movies do not work for me. Surprisingly enough, I found this movie to be mildly funny in the first act. It's of course very Michael Bay-esque, and his humor translates throughout basically this entire franchise, except for some of the movies that aren't with him primarily involved in the director's chair. And so the action sequences have a bunch of explosions, the jokes are continuously very sexual, and this movie kind of feels like it's written by a 6th grader. It spends way too much time on annoying characters. Some scenes are just absolutely absurd, and the dialogue does not help, because the dialogue is abysmal. The story is so disposable, and it is quite boring. I'll give it this though, the visual effects are surprisingly solid and hold up in today's standards. I just do not like this movie. In 4th place, I have Transformers Dark of the Moon, which is ever so slightly a step up above those past 2 movies. I thoroughly enjoyed the interesting setup and opening of this movie. As a whole, a lot of this movie plays out like a horror movie. I found it to be a refreshing take on the franchise. Don't get me wrong, it still has its incredibly bizarre and weird quote-unquote funny moments. They're of course trying to be funny, but it does not land. Shia LaBeouf seemed to have been losing his mind whilst filming this movie because his performance is crazy. Maybe that's what he thought was a good portrayal of the character, but it just comes off as bizarre. This movie gets bogged down in uninteresting lore with so many exposition dumps. It has off-putting tonal shifts as well. It goes from a horror movie to a light-hearted comedy. It might have the most fun action sequences of the franchise though, until it got topped by a movie much higher on this list, especially with the highway chase sequence in this movie that was highly enjoyable. But this movie feels like it's 3 hours long. The third act is crazy. It is a visual effects shit show. But if I had to choose, I might rewatch this one over the other ones. But breaking us into our top 3 is going to be Transformers Age of Extinction. To a lot of people, this is the worst Transformers movie, but to me, I can tolerate it more than the others. The humor is still very hit or miss, and that's being generous. The action is solid, but the characters are pretty dumb, and this movie as a whole is just highly disposable. I don't understand why the story is so convoluted. Can't we just have a simple Transformers Transformers story or a Transformers movie. I was enjoying it somewhat enough until Stanley Tucci showed up, who, like I said, I just found incredibly annoying. I think Mark Wahlberg is a fine enough fill-in for Shia, not to say that Shia was some incredible actor or anything. LaBeouf's performance in the past 3 movies weren't great by any means. And I enjoy that Wahlberg's character gets some depth with the disapproval of his daughter's boyfriend, and that divide between them was okay enough. I definitely hesitate to call it compelling by any means, but the middle section of this movie just really drags, and as a whole, it is so bloated. Not gonna lie, the final battle is pretty cool though. In second place, I have Bumblebee, which was a huge surprise for a lot of people when it came out in 2018. I didn't see the movie actually until just a couple days ago, and I found it to be a movie that very much so felt like a Disney Channel movie, except with a bigger budget. But the reason why I found this movie to feel like a Disney Channel movie was specifically visually, especially with the coming of age story. It felt like just something you would see on a channel like that. Overall, I found this movie to be a bit cringy. The story is cute. I feel like when it honed in on a girl and her car or alien, that side of this movie worked better than it actually being a Transformers movie, I found. Steinfeld is obviously good in her lead role, and the soundtrack is great, but the jokes don't land, and there are just better versions of a movie like this out there. But coming in first place, surprisingly, I have the newly released Transformers Rise of the Beasts. Now, if you want to hear my full in-depth thoughts on this movie, I'll leave my review linked right up above. But I found this movie to be serviceable enough and a fun time. It's predictable, the villain is very weak, and it drags here and there, but there are some funny moments, surprisingly. I thoroughly enjoyed the cast, with Anthony Ramos being a great lead and Pete Davidson being the standout for me. And there's also a good balance of people and Transformers. A lot of these movies have struggled to really find a good balance between those two aspects, especially the early Michael Bay movies, which heavily focused in on the people rather than Transformers, but I found like this movie had a good balance. There's a really bizarre choice made at the end, which, if we're going to talk about spoilers, the fact that Anthony Ramos can kind of turn into a Transformer himself, that was ridiculous and doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's something that I can put past when I found this movie to be overall a good time. But that is it for my ranking of the Transformers movies. Make sure to let me know down below in the comment section, again, what is your ranking? I'd love to see the list, and I want to thank you so much for watching this video. And again, if you did enjoy it, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, as well as that notification bell so you don't miss any further videos. And as always, look forward to more videos and reviews coming soon. My name is Ben, people call me Meter, and I'll see you guys in the next one.